Okay. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go around, give you a chance to introduce yourself, briefly give us your story, and then we'll get this started. I'm going to keep it organic, kind of ask you a few questions about where you've been and your veteran journey and your civilian side, how you transitioned, and then we'll just start throwing out some good resources and create a discussion around that. So my name's Josh Wathen. I was a 7th Group Special Forces Weapons Sergeant and a Special Operations Combat Medic in the military. When I got out, I got my degree in entrepreneurship at the University of Houston and have since helped start and build several different types of businesses. I did a little bit of contracting over in Iraq when ISIS was getting bad, a lot of liaison work and training work with the Iraqi Special Forces, and came back, ended up with 2 kids and a beautiful wife and 8 dogs and more stuff to do than I can handle. So Jason and I linked up about 4 months ago and have been growing Triad Cybersecurity, and it's been a great journey. So if you guys want to move down the list and tell us who you are and where you've been, we'll get started.
Sure, I'll jump in. So my name is Jason Rory, founder, CEO of Triad Resource Group. So I did a short stint in the U.S. Navy from 96 to 2000. That's where I got my start in the technology and security world. Just after getting my discharge from there, kind of moved around, did different IT jobs, worked on my education, got degrees and certifications. And yeah, in 2006, I started, my first company, which was an IT managed service company, ran that for 16 years. But in the process of running that company, I always looked for ways to kind of get back to the veteran community. So I linked up with a guy that I served with, a really good friend of mine. Back in 2012, we founded a 501c3 called Tech for Vets, where we were taking donated, slightly used laptops, desktops, tablets. We were refurbishing them and then providing to veterans who needed technology devices. We're providing those free of charge, just hoping to help quality of life, whether they were doing job search, going back to school, you name it. We were just trying to help out. We did a lot of work with some of the veterans in BAMC and San Antonio through the Wounded Warrior Project. So that was really, really cool experience. I actually got to go out and do some work at the VA hospital in Palo Alto, California, where they're doing a lot of brain rehab work, for some of the injured out there. So it was a great experience. It lasted for a few years before the funding kind of dried up, but it was one of the best things I'd done. So I always look to kind of give back to the community, whether it be volunteering. I sit on the board of directors for Grace After Fire for a year, which their mission is supporting female veterans out there. So if there's anybody watching this as a female veteran looking for various resources, I would definitely say look them up. Just in general, anytime I can help veteran professional, veteran-owned business with any IT cybersecurity needs, I'm more than happy to help out and do what I can.
Sweet. Thanks, Jason. Mr. Ruday.
Sure. So first of all, Josh, I didn't know you were owner of 8 dogs. I own 3, so teach me, master. I guess I have some additional instructions. That seems like a lot. But yeah, a little about myself. So, everything about me is a story. So, I kind of make sure that I don't go off on tangents. But long story short is I was born in Poland. That's where my name and accent comes from. When I was 14, my mom remarried. We moved to the United States. I went to high school in San Francisco Bay Area. For college, I went to West Point. After West Point, I did 6 years active duty, Iraq, Afghanistan, infantry, signal corps. And then after leaving service, I spent 10 years at ExxonMobil working on big capital projects all over the world, Angola, China, Indonesia, a lot of travel. And then in 2019, I took a big step of faith, started my business. First 2 years, total train wreck, totally disaster. And about 2 years in, I started getting some traction. And so nowadays, what I focus on is coaching through emotional intelligence, just because what I've seen through my coaching is that just about everybody sees and understands the value of emotional intelligence, but they don't really know how to put it into practice. And so when they do, they see results really fast, especially as it pertains to leadership. We've all worked in big organizations. Everybody's looking to grow leaders, and I cannot think of a faster way, a more engaging way, a more practical way than emotional intelligence. And the cool thing is, not only helps you at work, it also helps you at home. Last year, I had a great success. I signed up NASA, National Oil Varco. This year, I signed up Marathon Petroleum. And just yesterday, I talked to Amazon. So if Amazon goes through that, that would be a huge success. you know, the reason why I love to help entrepreneurs is, I'll be honest with you, I was this close to going back to corporate America. I mean, I'm telling you, the first 2 years, if I worked at Walmart minimum wage, I'd be crushing it compared to what I did the first 2 years. And so it was very humbling. I went from like a sky high, I mean, quite frankly, overpaid salary at ExxonMobil to almost making no money. And that was just after my second marriage. So it was a very humbling experience. And so to the extent I can help anybody to that process, I'm more than happy to do it, because it's one thing to grow a business, but I tell you, I cannot think of a better way to like really get to know yourself than starting a business. And it's a very tough transition for military folks, because we have a lot of great leadership skills, which is awesome. But one thing that we all suck at is selling. And you know, that's what I found is like the biggest Achilles heels for most of the military folks, is just not learning how to sell and not being able to demonstrate the capability that they have, because they cannot sell their job. So anyways, that's just a little bit myself.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Dr. Culver, how about yourself?
Yes, sir. So I'm a former Army intel officer, separated after Desert Shield and Storm. I was in the process of jumping branches from intel to aviation. I had a slot down at Fort Rucker for flight school, and that's when my family said, "Hey, we're not going to do the Army anymore." And so at the time, it was a very difficult, difficult jump for me. The last real assignment I had was with the Army Space Program Office. And for ASPO, we engineered and implemented satellite imaging systems that were resident across the tri-cert services, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. And so in Desert Storm, we basically fielded this system in the desert, and we located Scud missiles. We integrated with the Tomahawk cruise missiles coming off of the Navy, the ships. And so we were very instrumental in helping the coalition forces, not only seeking out but also destroying the Republican Guard. And it was, such a fascinating technology. But I changed my green suit uniform for a civilian contractor uniform. And so so my first job was with the GTE Defense Systems Service Organization at the Foreign Technology Division here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is now the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. I started up the Air Force Material Command Network Operations Security Center. And so I ultimately managed about 30% of the Air Force, their infrastructure and services with the AFMC NOSC, the Air Combat Command NOSC, and the Air Force Reserve Command NOSC. And then a lot of the comm groups at the local, the main operating bases. And on the headquarters AFMC staff for a time, and then was recruited into CACI. And I was an officer there of that company. I left CACI back in 2006. And I think CACI was running about $3 billion at that time. My division group in Dayton, Ohio, and Colorado Springs, I took over the group in Colorado Springs for for space systems when General Russinardi retired his second time. And so bounced back and forth between those two locations for a number of years. Came into the small business community to help a small 8A company develop their exit strategy from the 8A program. And then before I got too old, I started up Creek Technologies. And so here we are. So we started off at 2007. And just like any other small business, we nibbled on the fringes of those large business companies that I had in my network that I've developed over decades of work. And then started to grow. That's how I started to grow, from the subcontract position. Won our first prime contract in 2011 to integrate mission systems at Hill Air Force Base. And we closed out 2023 just under 30 million. We have about 275 employees in the company. And so that was the biggest year that we've had in business. And the forecast for 2024 is even higher than that. So we're very happy about that. Within Creek Technologies, we deliver three major lines of business. The first is IT engineering and services. And so from enterprise architecture all the way across to help desk support. So we have many contracts. That's the genesis of the company, is technology. And so the second line of business is education and training. We are the only federal contractor that's funded by Department of Homeland Security to deliver the master's degree in Homeland Security. We do that at the Naval Postgraduate School. And that program is ranked the #1 program in the nation, the master's program in the nation, among all other Homeland Security programs. So, so that's a Navy awarded contract that's funded by DHS. So depending on who we talk to, either the SecNav is doing cartwheels over the program that we're delivering at NPS, or whoever the secretary level is in the department for DHS. CHDS, the master's degree, is really the crown jewel in their education portfolio. And then the third line of business is professional services. And so in that, we provide program managers, financial analysts, subject matter experts for alternative fuels, alternative energies, aeronautical engineers. So we have kind of a quiver of different types of disciplines that we deliver there. So last year, we received the contract from the Air Force Global Strike Command to train the B-1 and B-52 pilots and the air crew in how to fly that aircraft. And we do that with in-classroom training, with instructor pilots. And then we do the instruction inside of the simulators. And then we go up into the cockpits with them as they fly those aircraft. And we give in-flight instructions without touching the stick, the yoke. So, so that's a very interesting thing. Myself, my education background, I have a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership and MBA in strategic organizational leadership, a master's in Homeland Security. I got that from Penn State, and then I have a doctorate in business administration from Franklin University, and I'm often called upon to be keynote speakers at different conferences. Small business conferences, entrepreneur conferences. I'm heading to Texas, Divider, Texas, to speak at a conference the second week of February. So that's coming up. And then in March, I'm out in Tucson to be the keynote at the National Association for Community Colleges. And so I'm heavily invested in the veterans community. I love to see the brethren be successful in what they do, because they've given with level of sacrifice that many people they just can't imagine. And so it's my mission, especially later in my career, is to give back and to help other veteran businesses become successful. And so that's my stick.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. So if you're in the chat and if you're an attendee, what I would encourage you to do is get in the chat and ask any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to get those answered as we go along. That can be a question over veteran service organizations, nonprofits, a piece of any of our panelists' stories, whatever's on your mind, and we will do our best to find a resource or an answer for you at both. What I'd like to do is just go around and kind of ask you guys one simple question, and that is, what is the one skill or thing that you learned in the military that you have found most applicable in gaining success in your professional life? For me, I think that would be rapport building. A lot of what special forces do is go into host nations behind enemy lines, and we just have to make friends everywhere we go. And so learning how to transition that into an actual sales pitch and get customers for our companies has been a steep learning curve. But that initial be friendly, be nice, sit and listen to people that I learned while I was in the military has really been probably the biggest factor to my success as I transitioned. And y'all can just jump in as your brains fire up.
I'll jump in. I think for me, I think it's just general work ethic. Things like punctuality, etc. I remember making the transition from boot camp on my way out to A school, and talking to some of the RDCs. After they kind of dropped the drill sergeant bit, would actually speak to you normally. They were just giving us advice as we were, on our way out to the fleet, and they were telling us, I guess one of the biggest things that stuck with me, one of them said, whatever you do when you get out there, just never half-ass anything. Just go full speed. And that stuck with me. And I think that transitioned very well to the business world, when it comes to the grind and running businesses, and just kind of going for it, full speed. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned.
So there's probably a lot of obvious things like leadership, strategic thinking, and and it's kind of hard to be able to separate specific skills because it's so much part of your DNA. It's like, I've been in the Army since I was 17, so it's really ever since I've been an adult. But maybe like one thing that doesn't seem so intuitive is physical fitness. And so what I mean by that is one thing that the military teaches you to do PT, doesn't matter, Iraq, Afghanistan, PT. And I tell you, obviously there's a lot of benefit when it comes to taking care of yourself. But one thing that I think it really helped me, especially during that tough time in those first 2 years where I was failing a lot, and a lot is probably an understatement, is that it gave me that a way to process my emotions productively. Because it's, the other day I was on this seminar on moral injury. And if you haven't heard about it, I definitely encourage you to look it up, especially for the combat veterans. And one of the things that really struck with me is, and I didn't realize until then, is that military teaches us to process emotions through anger, and there's benefits to it in terms of the battlefield performances, because when you're angry, you definitely go the extra mile, you definitely a lot more lethal. But that does not work so well when you try to encourage somebody to buy your product, and so where I think that the physical fitness was helpful, it was a healthy way for me to process a lot of this frustration, so I can let it go in a way that serves my body, doesn't hurt my client, and help me to show up more ready, and quite frankly, ready to take more hits, because at the end of the day, that's how the business starts. And the more you fail, the better it is. It's kind of like failing fast, because all these failures help you to really understand what your really business is. Like, I don't know how about you guys, but I'm like on my business 4.0 at least. And had I stuck to my 1.0 version, I would have been back in corporate America. And so being able to separate the failure from the learning, and then being able to keep showing up and keep taking the hits, and being flexible, and being able to focus on what you can control is super helpful. And I think that physical fitness gave me that capacity to be able to do that. And that was one of the key things that sustained me through those 2 years before I really got into emotional intelligence. Kind of in a way, kind of like I was doing emotional intelligence without even knowing it. That was a very practical and useful tool for me in my growth as a business owner.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and I think before we get on to some questions, Josh, I think I see some hands raised from Mike LeBlanc. Let me go ahead and answer that quick question. You know, and I think that this is common across to any branch of service. You know, it becomes ingrained in our DNA to be mission oriented. You know, to build teams. I think that Josh, I think that you mentioned, you know, teaming. You know, I think that that's fundamental in who we are. It's, you know, it's in our you know, in our DNA. But then also the communication aspects. You know, communication is what allows us to be successful. That helps frames and supports the mission. So, you know, so my quick answer is being mission oriented and being able to communicate to foster teams and relationships, because 90% of what we do in business is the relationships that we have and that we, you know, that we build and maintain. So those are the most important functions that has allowed me to be successful here at Creek Technologies.
Awesome. Let me see if I can get Mike. Are you there? Well, I'll give you a chance to talk here if you got a question, brother.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The chat is disabled on our side, I think.
Okay. We'll get that fixed up. Do you have a question, or you just let
No,
me
I was sitting there thinking, okay, question. I started typing and it was like, oh, I can't get through. So I just want to let you know that, you know, the chat was disabled, and so if you're not getting anything, that's why. But that's all I got at this point. Thank you guys for what you're doing.
We'll get it fixed up. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. All right, cool beans. We'll get that fixed up. So one other thing, I know that when I was first transitioning, trying to figure out, and we were just talking about this before we got started, trying to figure out where to go and what veteran organizations were out there that actually helped. And I hate to say it like that, but there's a bunch of nonprofits out there. Some of them, you send them your email, you get a phone call, and you talk to somebody, and they've got a great attitude, but there's not much follow through. So my question is, and y'all's walk through business and helping other veterans, what organizations have you been a part of or gotten assistance from that have really just hit the nail on the head?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in on that. So the traditional procurement technical assistance centers, which is now the Apex accelerators. So every state has an Apex accelerator, and there's many different chapters that are associated with that. And they are specifically funded to help small businesses in the federal government market to establish marketing collateral, to understand the procurement process, to understand how to establish teams, how to build networks. They provide free training and support to federal government or government contractor firms. And so, you know, so the Apex Accelerator, look them up in your state and find out which is the chapter or section that's close to you, because I think that they'll be very instrumental in helping you. And then also AFCEA has been an association that we've been associated with. You know, so I'm a lifetime member of AFCEA, and it's a great place to network with other federal government contractors, to you know, to listen to presentations from government organizations in future procurements and stuff like that. So, you know, so those I think would be the top two. And then of course each city has their chamber, you know, maybe the PMI group, you know, so just seek out those organizations. Not every organization is going to be best fitted for any company. But like if you're a cybersecurity company and that's where your focus is on business, then seek out an organization or a group that works together to collaborate on the trending of cybersecurity. So, you know, so those are some of the recommendations that I would make.
Awesome. How about you other guys? What have you been through? What have you used? What's helped? What have you seen other veterans go through that's been really effective?
Before I go, Lee, can I ask you a follow-up? I haven't, so I've used Apex before, but I haven't, was it FCA? Like, can you put that in the chat?
Yeah.
second.
Yes, I can. I'll go ahead and put in the, the link for FCO.
Yeah. And then and just kind of like a follow-up question. And then like from your standpoint, who's ready to go there? Is it somebody who's like brand new, somebody who's established? Because like, like when you said that to me, I'm thinking it's a room full of people from Boeing, all these big corporations. I guess like who would be like a good audience to go to those type of meetings?
Well, it's anyone who is really focused on federal government contracts. AFCEA is mostly focused within the Air Force. And so with me in Creek Technologies residing directly outside of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and incidentally, that's where 72% of the Air Force budget flows through. So if you're close to the money, you can be close to the requirements. A requirement without funding is nothing more than a good idea. So you want to be close to where the money is, follow the money, and be associated with those groups that will help you connect with those organizations that have the funding and have the requirements and that are doing the procurements.
Okay, no, thank you. I'm actually learning myself. I'll check them out. So I can definitely vouch for Apex. I actually use Apex to help me get my service disabled small business organization certification. I mean, you can definitely do it on your own and do it for free, but doing by yourself, it will be very hard because literally there's like 50 questions you gotta fill out. And so when you do it with an Apex person, tell you click here, done. But if you have to do it by yourself, it's kind of like doing your taxes. Like, am I gonna get arrested? It gets really hard. So yeah, so that was very helpful. Use Apex to get my service disabled veteran on small business certification. I saw somebody put in 4Block. So I'm actually volunteer for 4Block and I vouch for them. But 4Block is really when you try to find a job. It's not really for small business owners. But if you're looking if you're transitioning and you're looking for a job, I highly recommend it. And the thing I'll tell you from my experience, unfortunately, I'm not gonna name organization because I'm not here to point a finger, but what you find as a business owner, there's a lot of organizations that talk big game, but when you actually follow through, you find out it's just a whole bunch of smoke and mirrors to raise funds and pay for the paid staff on the nonprofits. Unfortunately, I cannot really vouch for any nonprofit other than the Apex that Lee mentioned. Because it's to me it's just heartbreaking because it's like because if I'm a veteran I don't think like I'm old business, not at all, but it's really heartbreaking that these people make promises, waste your time, and you find out it's all for nothing. And so I've been super blessed. I've gotten business from Fidelity, I've gotten business from American Petroleum, potentially from Amazon, a lot of top organizations. But I'll be honest with you, I got them just like anybody else. There was, my veteran status had nothing to do with it, even though all these companies on their websites say, hey, we support veteran business. It's, essentially what that means is they send you to this database when you register your business. And it's kind of like, if you ever watch Indiana Jones, the first part, at the end, where they, the Ark of the Covenant is sealed up and put it in the storage, that's what ends up happening. Like I have applied to all those databases. I have yet to get business, and I have yet to find a veteran who actually got a business from applying to those databases. And so, I wish I had better news. But if you found a nonprofit that was helpful, let me know, because in my 6 years of business, I have not. And so, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but just get yourself ready that a lot of people will talk big game, but when you actually get the details, it just sounds good to raise funds for that particular nonprofit.
What about you, Jason? You got any thoughts for us?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of, I guess, personal experience using organizations out there, on the personal side. But from a business perspective, and you're just getting involved in the community, and I mean, you kind of speak to some of this kind of through the channels where we met. I mean, you look at Combined Arms and here in Houston, what they're doing, providing kind of an umbrella organization to 30 or 40 organizations underneath that, supply services to veterans for pretty much any facet you can think of. Then you got the ones who provide other services and kind of get more into the networking, relationship building. And Josh, that's where we met, through Bunker Labs and other organizations like that. So I would say just one, if you're looking at the business side of things and wanting to get involved and help out veteran organizations, but then also be able to meet a lot of great people along the way, that could turn into relationships, that could turn in, to future business. So I guess for me, it's just a matter of just getting involved and helping out and, meeting a lot of really good people on the way.
Yeah, I would second that. Depending on every veteran nonprofit that I've been to, regardless of whether it's for business or PTSD or just hunting and fishing trips, there is a certain level of get out of it what you get into it, and a lot of that has to do with the perspective you have going into it, and just looking for other veterans that are around. As far as signing up for databases and trying to get our business recognized and trying to find clients, I can't say that I've had much luck, if any, using those things. But where I have had luck is going to where there's common ground for other veterans. Things like this webinar, and where we've met everybody on the panel, has made a world of difference, because even if the person doesn't end up being a customer or have a direct solution, I found that other veterans will work very hard to help each other out. And there is a solid fabric of values that we all carry around that you don't just see in common with regular civilians that I run into. So other than that, a few organizations that I've seen out there that are absolutely stellar would be the Mighty Oaks Foundation. If you're dealing with PTSD, suicide stuff, they're a faith-based organization. They do week-long retreats. They've got an amazing network. Most of their headquarters is all Spec Ops dudes. So they are all over everything PTSD, and they definitely say what they mean and mean what they say when it comes to helping people out with that. Another in kind of the Spec Ops world is 51 Vets and Elite Meat. These organizations will take a handful of operators and fly them around to different places in the U.S. and put them in front of people that own their own consulting agencies, Boston Consulting Group, the Exxon Mobils, VPs of different organizations, and really get them involved. There's different levels of organizations out there, all the way from like Bunker Labs and entrepreneurship to Next Op, helping you find oil and gas jobs. But something is better than nothing. And getting out there and asking the other veterans what they've used, especially if they're in a position to where you want to be, is the number one thing. So kind of rolling into that, I think that one of the best things, tools, assets that I've gotten out of my military service and that's translated into business is simply my story. There's been no more effective tool, none of my expertise, none of the fancy bells and whistles that I bring to the table has more of an effect on a business meeting or a network meeting than being able to tell my story, what I did overseas, what I did with my unit, a couple of funny stories, a couple of sad stories, stuff that makes people realize that I'm a human just like the rest of them, has really made a marvelous difference. So when you guys go out to a network, how do you get people's attention? Do you lean on your veteran status? Do you kind of just focus on the business? How does that work for you in everyday life?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, and I think it's, and that's a hard one to answer, because we all have a different lived experience in our military service, because we come from different, I guess, mission descriptors. In the Army, they're MOSs, right? And so, so as a 26 Echo, I was involved in engineering and aerial surveillance types of systems, initially on the OV-1D Mohawk. And, we have great stories, that we could tell on things like that. but when I go to these events, in my current place I am in business, I don't leverage that as much. I leverage the successes that we've had, and the connections that we have. So I'm a connector, with people. But I do have some great stories, that I can always tell about rolling down Huachuca Canyon after a jungle juice party. You just to go down to the Cactus Canteen to finish getting liquored up, and so those are great stories to tell. And every so often I'll get someone that I served with that pops up on social media that says, "Hey, remember when?" And so so those are great conversations. But but typically when you're involved in a community, people are going to know your ethics, your business ethics, what your focus in delivering quality service is. And so I would rest mostly on that, because I think your story is going to come out of that is, well, how did you get so good in business? How did you, well, it goes back to my military training. It goes back to, to what has been really infused in our persons, being mission oriented, being, a team builder, being a communicator. And so those are some of the things that I have really rested on, as I go into these meetings like AFCEA or Apex. Man, I love to go into an Apex training session, because we could talk about business development. How do you organize your business, to win government contracts? And oh, by the way, why don't you come in close to us and we'll help train you, we'll help mentor you, and we'll put you on a pathway for success. And so it's a tremendous thing to see young entrepreneurs that really takes the mantle of business and their military service and pushes that forward. And it's no greater sense of pride that we have as former military leaders than to see our young entrepreneurs and our veterans go off and be successful themselves.
Absolutely.
I would say that, using your veteran status, I think it's a two-edged sword from my experience. So, I deal with in a leadership space. And so what I found is that me mentioning being a veteran is helpful to somebody who is a veteran, but it's counterproductive when somebody is not a veteran, because what I found is that the common perception, right, wrong, or indifferent, is that, hey, in the Army, you tell somebody you do something, they'll do it right away, or otherwise they get court-martialed, So they're like, hey, well, what's what leadership can you teach us? I mean, here I have to encourage people, I have to motivate them. In the Army, just give them orders and get it done. That's the perception that I found. And so when I deal with somebody who doesn't have experience, I don't talk it at all unless it comes up. I talk about the results that I've gotten to the organizations that I've worked with, like NASA, and on and so forth. But having said that, when I do talk to somebody to military, it's, going back to rapport. It's a great rapport builder. It's a good way to connect with people. And then I talk about my services. So what I would encourage you to do is really, lean on, kind of going back to emotional intelligence, lean on empathy, put yourself in that other person's shoe and think about it as like, hey, is my military service going to be an asset or a liability? Because it's not going to be always an asset. And you want to make sure that when it's not an asset, you don't, it's not like you have to shame of it, just you have to lean on other parts of your story that will get you the result that you're seeking for.
Wonderful. What about you, Jason?
Well, I guess to answer your question, the way I kind of approach it is, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a core part of who I am and how I run businesses. Now, do I lead with it? Do I lean on my veteran status? No. Like Dr. Culver says, the story will come up, when it's time, through conversations. I want to make sure that, potential client or potential partner, whoever I'm speaking to, understands, what my business is, how we can be of benefit or a trusted partner, with that other organization. And through those conversations, typically it'll come up, well, how did you get started? And then that's kind of when I go into the veteran story. You know, I got started in the military. I'll focus on it, for a terribly long time, but I do want people to understand that, we are a veteran-owned business, and, and I love employing veterans. So I think it is a huge piece, but it's not what I want to lean on. I don't want to go in and people be under the impression that, oh, hey, I'm a veteran, do business with me because of that. I don't want it to come off that way. I just want to make sure that people understand that, yes, this is who you're dealing with if you want to do business with us. And I think it is of huge benefit, to be a veteran and have these, characteristics and work ethics, and that does translate into the business world. And hopefully, that's what is one of the biggest things that will, keep making us successful.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
I think that's a great point too, when it comes to transitioning, is that you are indeed leaving an old life or an old career for something new. And as you build that out, it's extremely important to be who you are in the moment. Otherwise you're just kind of stuck in the past, and that's not really where your feet are. So if anybody that's listening is going through that piece of their transition right now, I would encourage you to be comfortable where you're at. Don't forget where you came from, as that's going a big part of your foundation, but it's not necessarily where you're going, and that's an okay and a good thing. It can lead to a lot of prosperity. So as we're getting closer to the end, I'd like to hear just a story from each one of you guys on how you've been able to help another veteran in the past, whether that was somebody that was kind of down in the dumps and you helped pick them up, you got them to a networking event, you hired them, and whatever the case may be, just as a source of encouragement for the folks listening today.
Yeah, so I have a great story to tell, and this was picked up by the Dayton Business Journal, and ultimately led to Creek Technologies receiving the Veteran-Owned Business of the Year award. And I think this was back in, probably 2019. We all see it. We all are driving down the road, and we're, and we see veterans on the side of the road with signs holding it up. I'm homeless, I have no job, whatever, help me. And and so I've done it, and I think that we all have done that. We've kind of seen that, and we've driven past. And so one particular day I was coming to work, and it was kind of later in the springtime, and so I was coming off of the exit to come to our office to work. And there was a guy that I saw out there many times before, holding the same sign, asking for the same help. And and this time I was so driven, not just to give, but to help. And so oftentimes we'll give $1 or $2, and we're just kind of addressing the symptom to the problem. We're not addressing the problem itself. So what I did is I pulled up. He was right next to me in the car. I rolled down my window. I gave him $20 and my business card. And I said, you can take this $20 and go to McDonald's and get a meal, or you can come down to my office and I will give you a job. Mm-hmm. And I went off my way and pulled into work. That afternoon, my receptionist came and said, Lee, there's some guy out there in the reception area that says he has your business card, that says if that if he came to work here, that he would receive a job. And I thought, oh my word, what am I going to do now? Mm-hmm. And so I went out there and I brought the guy into, the conference room. I sat down and I heard his story. He's a former Army veteran with PTSD. He has a dysfunctional family. He was separated from his wife. He had at that time a 4-year-old little girl, and he had drug addictions, and while he was in the army in Afghanistan, he had a job kicking in the door, hunting down the Taliban. But those skills aren't easily transferred into into the public space. And so especially with those people that have severe PTSD. And so so I said, okay, listen, I'm going to ask you to go out there and and pick all the weeds and kind of clean up all of the flower beds around the big building here. And I'll pay you $50 to do that. And he gladly took this trash can and went around and weeded those flower beds. And then he came back. I gave him $50. And I said, if you come back tomorrow, then I'll ask you to, to clean off the parking lot. And he came back. And so he kept on coming back. And with that PTSD that he had, it was very difficult for him to be around people because he was grossly misunderstood. He had difficulties connecting with people because of that PTSD. And so over time, I began to see those walls come down. And it just so happened that one day my receptionist was sick, and I said, Quentin, I said, can you come in here and answer the phones for me? So now I'm getting him in closer, to the crowd, and not just on the outside, but inside. And he did a very good job, and he still looked like he did when he was standing on that, the side of the road. But I met with all my leadership and asked them to help me to do this. And then I had him go around inside of the building and empty the trash cans of all of the tenants in our building. So now he's opening up himself and he's getting closer to other people. And so what I learned is that he had tremendous IT skills that I wouldn't have normally been able to understand if I didn't first develop a relationship with him. So we hired him as a part-time employee. We sent him to receive his technical certifications, and we submitted him to get a clearance. And I never thought that he would be able to get a clearance because of his background, because of his drug backgrounds or whatever. But we met with the investigators for the clearances, because he used to have a secret clearance in the Army. So we helped him every step of the way, that we're committed to him. He gained a certification. He received his secret clearance awarded back to him. We put him on a full-time contract doing Tier 1 desktop support at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And then we helped him get a service dog. And that big service dog, it was a big fluffy thing, a white dog that was named Marshmallow. And he was such a calming thing to help him address his PTSD. Because a door would shut, he would screw himself into the ceiling. That's how bad it was. Well, over time, he came out of that. His family was put back together. He gained access to his daughter again. And now he's a government employee down at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola. And every year I receive a letter and a Christmas card saying, Lee, thank you for helping my family. Thank you for believing in me. And I apologize for getting emotional because it's an emotion thing for me. Because it is so frustrating to see how people will pass veterans and homeless veterans by that are asking for help. And they have the team building skills. Remember, I talked about that. They have team building skills and they know how to accomplish a mission. They just need somebody to believe in them And I believed in Quentin, and now he has a tremendous life in Florida, and I'm so thankful that I had an opportunity to share that story with you.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Lee.
Yes, sir.
So that's beautiful. Thank you, Lee. I don't have as awesome story as Lee does, but what I do try to do is plant seeds, because it's very easy to say, hey, when I'm somebody like Lee, when I'm that successful, I'll focus on giving back. What I try to do is give back as I go along. I've had some traction, but by no means am I super successful. But one thing that I'm super blessed to do is through a partnership with Impact the Hero. I'm able to put on emotional intelligence classes free to the veteran community. We've been doing that for 2 years. And so it's really cool to get these messages or people bumping into me, telling me how to use that at work or at home. It's very rewarding. Also, like another thing that I try to do is anytime I get a workshop, I always, sometimes because of insurance, it's an issue, but whenever I can always bring an assistant, and I always try to bring somebody who's a coach who hasn't had much traction, just to give them the experience they can put on the resume that they work at these top corporations, and they even pay me even though I don't have to. And so that's a big blessing. And for all of you who are on this webinar, if you're thinking about starting a business, by all means reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not an expert by any means, but you are free to learn from my scars. I'm not an oracle, but you can definitely learn from my scars. I can definitely walk you through some things, because one thing that by the way, this whole webinar I've been focusing on small business. So for example, when we were asked about resources, yeah, there's a lot of great resources for veterans. I was just talking about the small business resources. I think that's where the huge gap is. And one of the things that you find when it comes to small business, when you share your idea with your family, they're gonna say, "Oh yes, great, awesome, go do it." You're gonna be a millionaire, but what happens is then you go to the market and it falls flat. And so what I'm trying to get at, it's very hard to get balanced and feedback from somebody who's actually been through the crucible. And so anyways, if you ever want to run idea past me, or looking to how to get your business off the ground, I'll definitely share my scars. I'll definitely offer any support that I can. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn, because I think that there's definitely a benefit to have more veteran business owners. And I think the biggest problem, main reason why we don't have as many veterans is because that going from that step 1 to step 2, a lot of times people don't know how to get started. They don't get the right feedback. They don't know how to sell. And because of that, they rule out that possibility pretty much.
Awesome. What about you, Jason? You got a story for us before we close this sucker out?
Yeah, and I'll be quick so we can get to any last minute questions. Well, first off, Dr. Culver, amazing story. We all know PTSD and homelessness is a problem in the veteran community. So it's always amazing to hear stories of helping in that regard. I mean, my story, I think, is one that I went through, when I was doing the Tech for Vets, the 501c3. We were kind of working alongside the Wounded Warrior Project in San Antonio that got access to, BAMC. So at that time, we were providing brand new iPad tablets, to the guys that were there, rehabbing. So we went in to give an iPad to one of the guys, and he was a triple amputee. And just sitting there, listening to his story, his wife was there with their baby girl, who, she happened to be pregnant when he was, went on deployment. So when he came back injured, it was the first time he was able, to see his child. But I think the biggest thing, is, it's hard seeing someone in that kind of position, knowing he has a long road ahead to rehab. But what stuck with me is the smile on his face and the optimism in his voice, saying, I can't wait to get out of here, and just live my life the best way possible, with my new family, my baby girl. So it was very humbling, to see someone, there, being a triple amputee, but, just really, not taking, the down road, if you will. It was just really great, to hear that optimism and him just, wanting to get through, do his rehab, get right and get out and just continue his life. So that one always stuck with me, and it's hard thinking back, but it was an amazing experience for what little time we were able to give. And some, and the veterans that we were able to work with and hear their stories and, kind of help out. And, the whole mission was just to improve their quality of life, while they're going through rehab, and hopefully we were able to do that with him. So that's a story that sticks with me on a personal side. So
Awesome. Awesome. I didn't know you did that. That's cool. So I've got kind of a quick story. So I used to work for the PTSD Foundation, and every once in a while we'd manage this crisis hotline, and we'd get calls and basically go to crack houses and pull dudes out of crack houses, provided that they were willing. But in doing that, I have found that even as cool of a story, even though it's not glamorous at all when you're going down there, it's kind of sketchy. You're not carrying a weapon. It's kind of, crazy. Guys, if they're not ready for help, then they're not ready for help. So what I've almost found to be more impactful and more effective is to hold my veteran brothers and sisters accountable. If y'all are anything like me, you are hard-headed, and you haven't been there type of mentality was a part of my existence for a long time. And so when there are other veterans out there that are going through stuff, sometimes encouragement is the right approach, but there's a lot of times we're walking up and saying, look, I know you, and I know you're more capable of this, and why aren't you getting up and doing something about it? And being that accountability partner for them in a positive way. I'm not encouraging you to be a drill sergeant. It's not necessary for anybody. But just being a man of your word and challenging the other person, and any other veteran that's sitting in his audience today or looking at the recording of the video, I would challenge you to, if you're not being held accountable by somebody else, to go find that person. And if you are sitting on top of a mountain peak right now, to go back down in that valley and grab somebody and bring them up with you. I think ultimately, regardless of how you do that, that's what the purpose of this video is today. So I'd like to just take a moment and thank all of our panelists for being here today and taking the time out of your busy schedules, for everybody that showed up for the live webinar, and whoever may be watching the recording. We really appreciate it. Please reach out to any of us or all of us. We're happy to help with anything that you need help with and point you in the right direction. And I think we'll definitely be doing this again in the future. Thank you, guys.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Culver. Yeah, thank everybody. I'm just happy that we're able to provide this platform to kind of get the word out and help in any way possible. So to echo what Josh said, if there's anything we can do here personally through Triad or anything else, we're definitely here for you. Please feel free to reach out in any way that you see fit.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.